Thank you so much for joining. I want to give a quick shout out, Mazel Tov, to Alice Schoenfeld, who's being honored by Shaarei Tzedek with a virtual dinner this week. And Alice is on the call. And Alice, we admire you and are inspired always by you. And thank you so much, Alice, for everything you do for Beth Jacob, for Am Yisrael. And so nice that you're taking time always to learn, to grow, and to continue to learn. We have so much to learn from you, and you should continue to learn and grow.
Thank you, okay. Rabbi Topp. Thank you very much for your beautiful words. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome, Alice. Okay, keep going strong. Mazal Tov.
Thank you. Thank
you. Okay, so 2 weeks ago, we had a shiur called Development of Halacha, the case study of the Rush. And we spoke about, if you remember, when you begin praying for rain and how that minhag developed over the course of the generations. So I thought it'd be interesting to have another shiur that kind of is a case study about the development of a custom and the development of halacha, and to talk about the 18 minutes. There are a lot of times that we do things and we don't understand why we're doing them. Sometimes we don't really even understand what we're doing and what the meaning of it is. I think there's a little bit of confusion about the 18 minutes. People will sometimes say, oh, I have 18 more minutes and 18 more minutes and 18 more minutes. And before you know it, it's already late into the night. So I wanted to talk about the mitzvah of Shabbos. Of course, Shabbos is a tremendous gift that we have that's with social media and electronics and the internet and everything. Baruch Hashem, that we have the day of Shabbos to connect with one another, to connect with the family, to connect with Torah, to connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And usually a beautiful part of Shabbos, of course, is gathering together around the Shabbat table, which is harder to do these days. But what's the story with the 18 minutes? And when does Shabbos really begin? So the beginning of this story, the beginning of this topic, you really have to understand a mitzvah, which is one of those mitzvahs that have always, for some reason, gone under the radar. And it's a mitzvah that many people are not aware of, which is the mitzvah of Tosefet Shabbos v'Yantif v'Yom Kippur. Tosefet Shabbos means that there's a mitzvah to add on a little bit to Shabbos at the beginning and at the end. Shabbos, we know, is the seventh day of the week. But we have a role to play in sanctifying Shabbos, both through Kiddush that we make on Friday night, but also there's a mitzvah to bring in Shabbos a little bit early. Shabbos is different than Yantif in terms of our role in sanctifying the day. When it comes to Yantif, so then Beis Din and the Jewish people are involved in sanctifying the month. And in that sense, we're involved in determining the date of Yantif, even though nowadays, the calendar is set and we don't have an official Jewish Beit Din that's sanctifying the month. But conceptually, the Jewish people are involved in sanctifying the month and the Jewish calendar and thereby the holidays. For this reason, in Kiddush and also in davening on Yantif, we say in the Shmona Esrei and in the Kiddush, Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim. Blessed is Hashem, who sanctifies the Jewish people and the times of the Jewish calendar. And the Gemara says what that blessing really means is that God sanctifies the Jewish people and he gives us the ability, he gives us the capacity to sanctify and determine the calendar. So with regards to the holidays, the Jewish people and the Beit Din conceptually is involved in sanctifying the month and determining when Yantif is. Shabbos is different. On Shabbos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu established Shabbos as the seventh day of the week. We're not really involved in sanctifying and determining when Shabbos is. I think it might have been Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha, and we're mourning the devastating loss of Rabbi Sachs. I think he might have been the one to explain that Shabbos is about creation and Yantif is about redemption. And this explains why, when it comes to creation of the world, it was just Hashem who created the world. we weren't involved in the creation of the world. And although we try to be creative during the week and we model ourselves after HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the degree we can on a human level to be creative, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world without our help. And that's why Hashem decided that it was the seventh day is going to be Shabbos, whether we like it or not, and we're not really involved in that. For that reason, in the Kiddush and also in davening, we say Baruch Atah Hashem Mikadesh HaShabbos. Hashem sanctifies Shabbos. But with Yontif, that's about redemption of the Jewish people. So we're involved in history also. Hashem wants us to be involved to push along redemption. We have to take the initiative and take the bull by the horns, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, assists our efforts. And because we're involved in redemption of the Jewish people, that's why the Beis Din decides the calendar. The Jewish people have a role to play in the establishment of the holiday, and for that reason, that's why it's Mekadesh Yisrael. B'Hazmanam, Hashem sanctifies the Jewish people who have the ability now to determine the Jewish calendar. But by Shabbos also, we have a role to play. That's what I'm trying to explain, that even though Shabbos is a day that's determined by Hashem, it's testifying that God created the world, and we weren't involved in the creation of the world. So Hashem sanctifies Shabbos. It's Kviya V'Kaima. But still, we have a role to play in saying Kiddush, right? When we say Kiddush Friday night, we're declaring that this day is different than all other days. And number two, we have a role to play in that the Torah says that we should accept upon ourselves Shabbos a little bit early. And we should extend Shabbos a few extra minutes as well. It's a mitzvah that many people are not aware of. It's called Tosefes Shabbos, to add on to Shabbos. Now, where do we learn this from? It's a very, very interesting pasuk. The pasuk is by Yom Kippur, right, Ron? The pasuk is by Yom Kippur, where it says, "V'nisem es nafshosechem," you should afflict yourselves, "B'tisha lachodesh," on the 9th of the month. May erev ad erev, from evening until evening, tishbedu Shabbatchem. You should observe the day, the holy day of Yom Kippur. So, wait a second. Yom Kippur is on the 10th of the month. Why does the pasuk say that you should afflict your souls and observe the day B'tisha lachodesh, on the 9th of the month? Yom Kippur is on the 10th. There's two interpretations given by the rabbis. One interpretation is that the Torah gives us a mitzvah to prepare on the 9th for the 10th. And the way we do that is there's a mitzvah to actually eat on the 9th of Tishrei, to prepare ourselves to be able to fast on the 10th. And the Gemara says it in very striking fashion that a person who eats and drinks on the 9th of Tishrei, it's viewed as if you fasted on the 9th, in addition to fasting on the 10th. And one reason for this is because Hashem cares about us, and Hashem, just like a parent takes care of a child, and if the child is going in for a surgery and has to fast the next day, let's say, right, to the parent, says, make sure that the child gets enough sleep and gets enough food and drink before the day of the surgery. So too Hashem cares about us because we're his children. And he says, Tayara Yidin, make sure to eat a little bit, to drink and to eat on the 9th of Tishrei. We would have figured that out on our own, to eat and drink in preparation for Yom Kippur. But Hashem cares about us and gives us a mitzvah to eat on the 9th of Tishrei. And the other idea of why we need to eat and drink on the 9th of Tishrei, Rabbeinu Yonah has a different idea, that it's not about preparing for the holiday, and that Hashem cares about us and gives us the mitzvah to eat as because he cares about us, he gives us the mitzvah to eat, but rather Rabbeinu Yonah says that really Yom Kippur is a happy day. And we receive the second luchot, the second tablets on Yom Kippur. We receive a message of forgiveness from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the day of atonement, the day of forgiveness. But now usually happiness from a Jewish perspective is manifest through eating and drinking, right? In Judaism, right, we're not a religion of asceticism, but we're supposed to enjoy food and drink just with limits and with discipline. And And Shabbos is supposed to be celebrated, and Yom Tov is usually celebrated with meals, right? With food and drink. And we sanctify the meals with Kiddush. But with Yom Kippur is a very happy day, right? It's a very happy day. It's not a sad day. And usually happiness is manifest and reflected in eating and drinking. But you can't eat and drink on Yom Kippur because why? Because we're like the angels. We're totally disconnected from the physical world, or we're trying to be, and we're trying to be connected spiritually. So Rabbeinu Yonah says that it's a happy day, but you can't have a meal because we're trying to be holy and we're trying to be like Malachim. So the Torah put the mitzvah of eating and drinking on the 9th of Tishrei. And the 9th of Tishrei, in a certain sense, is the Yontif dimension, is the day that we could fully express the happiness of Yom Kippur. According to Rabbeinu Yonah, is a revolutionary, astonishing idea, which is that in a certain sense, Yom Kippur is a 2-day holiday. Yom Kippur is on the 9th where we're eating and drinking, because that's that's how we usually express our simcha. At least that's one of the ways that we express our simcha, is through a nice meal. And we do that on the 9th. And then we have, of course, the full fast day of atonement of Yom Kippur. So that's one understanding of this pasuk of B'Tishel HaChodesh. Dick, good to see you. Welcome. And Dick was the honoree at the last year's gala, so I got to give Dick a shout out always. We got to give Dick a special welcome. So the pasuk says again that you should afflict yourselves on the 9th of the month. But Yom Kippur is not the 9th, it's the 10th. So one explanation is that there's a mitzvah to eat and drink on the 9th. And I just gave you two explanations as to why there should be such a mitzvah. However, the rabbis gave another interpretation of this pasuk, that Yom Kippur should be observed on the 9th of the month, when after all, it's really on the 10th. So the rabbis say that you should be Mosef Mechol al HaKodesh. That the day of Yom Kippur is on the 10th, but that the Torah wants us to add a little bit of the secular, a little bit of of a regular day, to add on to the holiness of Yom Kippur. And the Gemara says that this mitzvah is not only true by Yom Kippur, but it's also true by Shabbos, and it's also true by Yom Tov. The Rambam, interestingly, says that the Torah mitzvah to add on to the day is only by Yom Kippur. But with regards to Shabbos and Yom Tov, then it's a rabbinic mitzvah to add on to the day. And all the other commentaries disagree with the Rambam and say, no, the Gemara seems to make it clear that even though the pasuk is in the context of Yom Kippur, but the pasuk makes it clear, right? Because it says me'erev ad erev tishbetu shabbatchem. So the rabbis derive from those additional words that the mitzvah is not only true by Yom Kippur, but it's also true by Shabbos and Yom Tov. Most of the commentaries and most of the Rishonim say that it's a Torah mitzvah, not just on Yom Kippur, but also on Shabbos and Yom Tov, to add on a little bit mechol al hakodesh. So you add a little bit onto Shabbos. Now, how do you view that time? Okay, so you want to accept Shabbos a little bit early. Now, we do this very often, right? In the summer, right? Because if Shabbos starts late, and you want to start the Shabbos a little bit earlier, perhaps because you get a little tired when it's late. So especially I see somebody yawning over there, so it's you're getting tired. So if Shabbos is so late, people might fall asleep in the soup. So you want to make Shabbos a little bit earlier. Now, what I'm sharing with you is that it's not just a convenient thing to do to start Shabbos earlier, but it's actually, to our surprise, there's actually a mitzvah to start Shabbos earlier. Now, Rav Soloveitchik was a little bit opposed to some people who started Shabbos early, because one of the reasons why people sometimes start Shabbos early is because, right, they eat dinner during the week at 7:00, and they want to have their meal on Shabbos at the same time at 7:00. And Rav Soloveitchik felt that if that's the reason why you're starting Shabbos early, just so it should be like the other days of the week, then that's wrong, because Shabbos is supposed to be different. It's not supposed to be just like the other days of the week. But if the reason why you're starting Shabbos early is because, right, because you're excited to bring Shabbos in early, and you're anticipating and exciting, and you're excited about welcoming the divine presence. So you want to bring Shabbos in early, and you don't want to be so tired at the meal, and you don't want your family members to be tired at the meal. So that's a beautiful idea to bring in Shabbos early. So let's say you bring in Shabbos early. So how do you view that period of time? Is that really Shabbos? Or is it just like quasi Shabbos? If you accept Yontif early, a half hour early, is it really Yontif? Or is it just, like Yontif? But it's not really Yontif. So for example, there's a number of implications of this. If you accept Pesach, can you accept Pesach early? Are you allowed to eat matzah? If you accept Pesach early, are you allowed to eat matzah and fulfill the mitzvah of matzah during that time? Or if you accept Yontif early on Sukkot, can you fulfill the mitzvah of sitting in the sukkah?
Nope.
Okay, so Ayala thinks the answer is no. Okay, so there's actually a debate about this question, because now let's assume for the moment that Shabbos and Yontif and Yom Kippur begin at sunset. Okay, so sunset is around, I don't know, maybe 4:50 or so. Sunset is 4:51. Let's assume Shabbos, Yontif, and Yom Kippur begin at 4:51. But Tzeit HaKochavim, which is nightfall, is at least 30 minutes, 35, 40 minutes later than that. So, but if you accepted Yontif already, why can't you fulfill the mitzvah of matzah? The Torah says that you're supposed to add on to the holiday and add on to the Shabbos. So there's two different ways, there are two different schools of thought of how to view this additional period of time. One is that we view it as really like you're taking upon yourself a vow to extend the Shabbat, and it's and you're accepting upon yourself the prohibitions of Shabbat a little bit early. The Torah actually tells us that there's a mitzvah to do this, as I said, but the nature of the mitzvah is that you could accept it 2 minutes early, you could accept it 10 minutes early, you could accept it 20 minutes early, or an hour early, right? And when you accept it early, you're really accepting upon yourself, Nisan, the restrictions of Shabbos, the restrictions of Yontif. But it's not really Shabbos or Yontif yet. The other possibility is to say that the nature of the mitzvah is more revolutionary. It's more of a maximalist notion of this mitzvah, which is that when you accept upon yourself Shabbos and Yontif early, it becomes that Shabbos, it becomes Yontif. And the Torah, through this mitzvah, gives us the capacity to expand and extend the Kedusha of the day. So what's the nafkamina? What's the difference between these two different schools of thought? Is it a more minimalist view, which is really that it's not Shabbos or Yontif yet, but you're just accepting upon yourself the prohibitions early? Or is it a more maximalist view, which is that it's really Shabbos, it's really Yontif, and that you have that tremendous capacity to add on to Shabbos or Yontif? So the practical difference is what? What are some practical differences?
Well,
Ayala?
okay, you cannot make Kiddush before a certain time out of Shabbat. You can bring it in early, but you can't theoretically do that. And on Yontif, you said about Sukkot, you can't say Leshav Basuka, I think, before a certain time.
Okay, so what's interesting is that with regards to Kiddush on Shabbos, that's an exception. Everyone agrees that you can say Kiddush and fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush when you make early Shabbos. And the reason for that is based on the Gemara that Rav made Kiddush even at the right before Shabbos. So Kiddush is an exception Friday night. We usually assume you make early Shabbos, whenever you have the meal, you can make Kiddush and fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush. But that's right. But with regards to Sukkah, so then it really depends on how you view this question, right? With regards to Sukkah, with regards to the 4 cups of wine on Pesach night, with regards to matzah, right? So this would depend upon how you view Tosefes Shabbos. If you view Tosefes Shabbos as really more in a minimalistic way, that it's not really Yantif, so then you would not be able to fulfill the mitzvah of Sukkah. But if you say that the nature of the mitzvah is such that we have the capacity to use our Tzelem Elokim to extend the Kedusha of the day, so then it's already Sukkos. And then you can fulfill the mitzvah of Sukkah. Now, Ayala is correct that we're usually stringent in this regard. And even though there's a debate about this issue, we're usually stringent, and we assume that you have to wait until nightfall to fulfill the mitzvah of matzah, to fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah. You have to wait until around 35, 40 minutes at least after sunset. Now, another question is, let's say there's suddenly a extenuating circumstance, and there's an urgent need to do a prohibited activity. So there is an opinion, believe it or not, that says, and don't try this at home, but there is an opinion that says that if you've accepted upon yourself Shabbos or Yontif early, and there's an urgent need, you might be able to do Hataras Nedarim. You might be able to, go to 3 people and have a kind of formal annulment of vows ceremony, right? There are times where you make a vow, and then you could annul the vow under certain circumstances. So there might be a situation where you could annul the vow. And others say that's outrageous, that's astonishing, that's crazy, right? How could you, once you've accepted upon yourself Shabbos, you can't do Hataras Nedarim to annul the vow. And part of the reason why some say that is because they have a more expansive view and a maximalist view of this mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos, that you're really creating Shabbos early, and then once you started, you can't go back, and it's Shabbos, and there's nothing you can do about it. Let me tell you another interesting question. This is a little tricky, which is what happens. This actually happened, and it was a question that was posed to the Nitziv. A woman accepted upon herself Yontif early, 20 minutes early. Then, after she accepted upon herself Yontif early, she received the news that a family member had passed away. What did she do? And that the family member passed away, and the family member had been buried. So, if it's a regular weekday, and if we're not taking into consideration Yontif, so then she has to sit Shiva, right? 7 days. What did she do? She immediately sat on the floor. She took off her leather shoes, and she sat Shiva for a couple of minutes. After Yontif, she sent the question to the Nitziv, Rav Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin. What does she do? Right? Is the few minutes of mourning that she observed prior to Yontif, is that considered a Shiva observance? Right? Because she'd already accepted upon herself Yontif. What's the halacha? If a person hears news that a family member has passed away, lo aleinu, but it's Yontif, you can't observe Shiva on Yontif. We know that if a person loses a family member on Yontif or Chol HaMoed, so the burial takes place, but the Shiva only begins after the Yontif. So if indeed it was Yontif already, so then the fact that she sat on the floor, she should, if it was Yontif already, then she should not have sat on the floor, and she should not have taken off her leather shoes. And even though she did, it's not considered a Shiva observance because it was Yontif. And then she would have to observe the Shiva, the full period of Shiva, 7 days after Yontif. Okay, the second day of Yontif counts as the first day. We don't need to get into the detail. However, if you say that it's not Yontif yet, right? Because it's Tosefes Shabbos and Yontif. It's not really Yontif. It's that she accepted upon herself Yontif early, but it's not really Yontif. It's maybe more that she accepted upon herself the restrictions of Yontif, but it's not fully Pesach or Shavuos or Sukkot. So if it's not Yontif, then she did a quick observance of Shiva prior to Yontif. And what's the halacha? Dick, what's the halacha? If you observe Shiva before Yontif,
The Chag takes it over.
That's right. Ayala answered for you, Dick. Dick, you want to make a comment, but you have to find the unmute button. The halacha is that if a person observes a few minutes of shiva, there you are, Dick.
Yeah, then there's no shiva. Shiva's over.
That's right. That's right. A person observes a few minutes of shiva prior to Yantif. Yantif comes along and nullifies the remainder of shiva.
Right.
And so this was the question posed to the Netziv, and the Netziv analyzed both sides of the question, and he leaves it as a doubt. He says he's not sure how to view the mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos. Do you view it in a more minimalistic way, which means that it's not really Yantif yet, and if that's the case, her observance of Shiva was legitimate and is considered Shiva observance, and then Yantif comes along and nullifies it? Or do you view Tosefes Shabbos, or Tosefes Yantif in this case, this additional amount of time, do you view it in a more maximalist way, that really it's already Yantif, and then her Shiva observant, and she shouldn't have observed Shiva, and it doesn't have any legitimacy, and the Yantif is not going to nullify the remainder of Shiva, and he leaves it as a suffix, and he says that the halacha follows the lenient position in laws of mourning. And so he paskined, because it's a doubt, that she could be lenient and she could assume that the Shiva was nullified by the Yantif. So this is just, I think, a fascinating, it's a very interesting topic in terms of the nature of Tosefes Shabbos and Yantif. Yeah, Nisan. I can't hear you, Nisan. You have to unmute yourself.
I was wondering if you can clarify, even if you were to take the approach of that you extend the Kedusha, but that is okay for Shabbos. But what about for Yom Tov, that you have to eat matzah on a certain day? Does the day actually change when you extend the Kedusha? Is it now the 15th of Nisan, if I extended the Kedusha, even on that approach?
Yes. Again, let me make it clear. The halacha is that we follow is that we assume that you have to wait until nightfall to eat matzah. But that's right. According to that opinion, that takes a more maximalist view of it, that it's already viewed as night. It's already viewed as Pesach. It's already viewed as the 15th of Nisan, and you would be able to fulfill matzah according to that position. But the majority, we usually assume that we don't go so far as to say that, and that you have to wait until nightfall to eat matzah. Yeah, Ron.
There was an interesting minhag in the shtetl on how Shabbat was announced. There was a shul clapper, and 18 minutes before sunset, you would announce Shabbat. How would you do that? On Thursday, you would observe sunset, and then you will, go on Friday, 18 minutes before, and announce it. Until now in Jerusalem, and they do have a siren in Bet Shemesh, or they play music 18 minutes before. Now, talking about strictness of Shabbat, there is such a thing as Shabbat Shel Chol. A guy's in the desert, he doesn't know what day of the week it is. He says, from today I'm going to count 7 days, the 7th day is Shabbat. So talking about being so strict, over there the Shabbat is given to him, even though it might be on a Tuesday, So my question now is, Shabbat is at 5:49 this Friday. Are the 18 minutes included in it? I think they are, right?
Okay, so we're going to get to the 18 minutes in a moment. So if sunset is 4:51, candle lighting is going to be 4:33. It's not. Meaning it's Friday is in a couple of days. There might be a minute or two earlier, but the custom is to light candles 18 minutes prior to sunset.
Right.
But we could assume for the moment, we didn't fully explain, but so we're building up. We're building it up, Ron. But that's right. Sunset is 4:51, and let's say if sunset is 4:50 on Friday, candle lighting is going to be 4:32, 18 minutes prior to sunset. And so if we try to understand why would there be this custom to accept Shabbos 18 minutes early, and there's a nice concept for even for men also to accept it 18 minutes early. There's a minhag, a custom for women to try their best to light candles 18 minutes prior to sunset. So the reason is the first idea is that there's a mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos. that there's a concept of adding on to the holiness of the day, whether you view this in a minimalistic way or you view it in a more maximalistic way, but there is such a mitzvah. And this is why this is at least the first idea as to why it's important for a woman to light candles 18 minutes early, and for a man also to try to accept Shabbos early, is because it's not just because you don't want to cut it so close, right? And you don't want to cut it so close because Shabbos is Shabbos. You don't want to violate Shabbos. But aside from not wanting to cut it close, there's actually a mitzvah to add on to Shabbos. Part of the idea of the mitzvah could be that we want to create a fence around the mitzvah of Shabbos, but there is a mitzvah, and that's why we want to light candles and begin Shabbos a little bit early. Now, if a woman doesn't light candles 18 minutes before, then she should try to do so as soon as possible. 16 minutes before, 15 minutes before, 13 minutes before. So she has some time there. Those are the 18 minutes. It's the 18 minutes prior to sunset. Once it's sunset, then you have to assume that that you have to observe the restrictions of Shabbat. But let's continue building in terms of understanding the 18 minutes. So the first idea is that this concept of adding on to Shabbos, which I think many people are not aware of. You should be aware of it, and you should know that you're fulfilling a mitzvah when you bring in Shabbos a little bit early, and you extend Shabbos at the end a little bit late. Now, but how early? And Ron, you just touched on how early can you accept Shabbos? Can you accept Shabbos on Wednesday? Can you accept Shabbos on Thursday? When can you accept Shabbos? How early can you accept Shabbos? So the Ramban says something very interesting. The pasuk says the Chorad Yom HaShabbat Lekadsho, that you have to remember the Shabbos to sanctify it. And the Ramban says that if you have a pasuk in the Torah, you have to assume that it's a mitzvah that applies every single day. So Ramban has an astonishing comment that Shabbos is not just one day a week. Shabbos pervades and is ubiquitous, is throughout the entirety of the week. That there's a concept, perhaps even a mitzvah, to remember Shabbos every single day. You don't have to observe Shabbos. There's no mitzvah to observe Shabbos. You don't have any of the restrictions of Shabbos, but there's a mitzvah to remember Shabbos. When do we do this? We do this, yes, that's right. We do it in the morning when we say Hayom Yom Shlishi B'Shabbos, Shebo Hayol V'Yamom Beis Hamikdash, right? Hayom Yom Revi B'Shabbos. Okay, so we at least we kind of count the days of the week in the context of how close are we getting to Shabbat, and that's the way we're fulfilling this concept of remembering Shabbat. But how early can you really accept Shabbat?
I think I heard in a shiur today, if I'm not mistaken, 3 days before Shabbat, you could start getting into it, but then you have to keep it 3 days after Shabbat as well. Is that correct?
That's very interesting. So already Wednesday, right? Because Shabbos is in a certain sense the center and the pinnacle of the week. And so already on Wednesday, we begin really kicking it into high gear and anticipating Shabbat. For this reason, for the Shir Shal Yom of Yom Revi, check the last couple lines. You never notice this. It'll really be very interesting. That if you see the last couple lines of the Shir Shal Yom, you'll notice it's L'chu Naranu Ala Hashem, Nariel Etzur Yeshenu, right? Because we're already beginning to get excited about the mitzvah of Shabbat. And by the way, before I forget, Rav Soloveitchik pointed out that Shabbos is not just to keep Shabbos, but it's also get excited on Erev Shabbos for Shabbat. And he lamented how in the United States that although we have many wonderful Jews, but we have many Shomer Shabbos Jews, but that we have fewer Shomer Erev Shabbos, right? We have many Shomer Shabbos Jews, but we don't have as many Jews who get excited on Erev Shabbos, right? With anticipation and preparation and enthusiasm and excitement for the arrival of Shabbat. And but already from Wednesday, you're right, Ayala, we begin thinking about Shabbat. But and you're allowed to say Havdalah. If you forget to say Havdalah or you're not able to say Havdalah on Saturday night, you're able to still say Havdalah on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday until Tuesday evening. Okay, because Wednesday and on connects to the upcoming Shabbat. However, you cannot accept Shabbos on Wednesday or Thursday, or even most of Friday. The halacha is that the earliest time that you can accept Shabbos is called Plag HaMincha. Plag HaMincha. This is very important to remember in the summer months, when you accept Shabbos early, that you're not allowed to light candles with a bracha prior to Plag HaMincha. Plag HaMincha is an hour and a quarter prior to sunset. So while we think about Shabbos every single day, and already on Wednesday, we kick it into high gear in a certain sense, and we start doing things in honor of Shabbos, and we're already raising our level of anticipation already starting Wednesday. But in terms of actually accepting upon yourself Shabbos, that's a much smaller window, and that's just an hour and a quarter prior to Shkia. An hour and a quarter depends upon the time of the year, right? In the summer, it's really, you take the whole day and you divide it into 12 parts. So in the summer, an hour might be 70 minutes. And so an hour and a quarter might be, 90 minutes or so prior to sunset. So if sunset in the summer is, is 8:15. So the earliest time to accept Shabbos is really might be around 6:45, which is called Plag HaMincha. And you should not light candles with a bracha prior to that time. In the winter, the hour might be more like 50 minutes, right? Because it's a shorter day. And then Plag HaMincha is going to be maybe something like, an hour prior to Shkia. And so now if Shkia is 4:50 or so, you shouldn't start Shabbos prior to 3:45 or so. Yes, Stephanie, did you want to ask something? Okay, I see, Stephanie, you raised your hand. I'm not sure if you did that intentionally or not. Or you just wanted to say hello.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So if you light candles before the Zman, not the 18 minutes, but let's say it's 4:33 candle lighting, and you light it at 4:25 or 4:20, but you may need to shut off the oven or do something. You can light with a tnai, so that you light the candles to be sure it's on time, and then go ahead and do, as long as it's before the Zman, to do that something that you needed to do.
Great question, Ayala. And by the way, others, you're welcome to ask questions. I know you like Ayala being your representative to ask questions and give comments, but you're also welcome. I know we've had a couple of other comments, which is fine. No pressure on anyone, though. But Ayala, that's a great question. When a woman lights candles, the default setting is that's considered an acceptance of Shabbos. And that's the reason, by the way, why Shabbos is Hadlakas Neras Shabbos, candle lighting is an exception where you don't make the bracha prior to lighting. Usually you say the bracha prior to doing the mitzvah. But in the case of lighting Shabbos candles, when the woman says the bracha, there's an opinion that says that that's considered acceptance of Shabbos. So if you were to make the bracha first, that could be considered acceptance of Shabbos, and then you can't light the candles. So for that reason, that's why the minhag is for a woman to light the candles first. Then she kind of, covers her eyes and says the bracha, and then she enjoys the candles. The enjoyment of the candles, at least, is left over to be done after the bracha. So at least the bracha precedes part of the mitzvah. But for that's the reason why you do the lighting of the candles first, and then you do the bracha, because the lighting the bracha and the lighting of the candles, but also the bracha itself could be considered an acceptance of Shabbos. Now, but the Ramah does say, Ayala, the Ramah says that it is permitted to light al tanai with a condition. You could say that, and you should say it. If you think it's also okay, but it's better if you say it, and you say, I'm not accepting Shabbos through my candle lighting, or I'm lighting candles, but on the condition that it's not considered acceptance of Shabbos. It has to be way before Shkia, right? You have to make sure it can't be after sunset. We're talking now, 20 minutes before, 25 minutes before, or even if it's 18 minutes before, you need to do something really quickly. But really, it's best, you shouldn't abuse this privilege. But if it's really necessary, where you need to do something after you light candles, just say, at least think it, but say, I'm lighting on condition that I'm not accepting Shabbos yet. And you're allowed to do that according to the Ramah, which is the Ashkenazic practice. Now, but what you have to be careful is on Yontif, that you could also do this on Yontif. Let's say a person wants to drive in the car to go to shul or to go to somebody's house. So the woman could light, but she should light al tanai on condition that she's not accepting Yontif. What she has to be careful not to do, she has to make sure not to say Shechiyanu. Rav Shechter pointed out that once you say Shechiyanu, right, you say Shechiyanu v'kimanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh. Thank you, Hashem, for bringing me to this time. So when you say Shechiyanu, then that makes it definitively Yom Kippur. That makes it definitively Pesach. And so you once you light and you say Shechiyanu, that'll be considered Yontif, and your Tanai, your condition is not going to help. So you have to be careful not to say Shechiyanu, and you say Shechiyanu later. Yes, Stephanie. Stephanie can go ahead now. I think Stephanie. Yeah, go ahead, Stephanie.
Hi. Okay. Hello. I was wondering if can I light Shabbat candles in my house? Let's say 20 minutes before, and I'm leaving, but my kids, they're still getting ready up until the last minute. Is that okay? Is that kosher?
Yes, that is kosher. So you're trying to light 18 minutes prior to sunset, which is the custom. But the others in the house, they should also try to accept Shabbos 18 minutes before. But if they can't, they're allowed to do malacha even during those 18 minutes. But they shouldn't cut it so close. Right, they should stop doing malacha as soon as possible. At least 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes before, both to make sure not to cut it so close, and number 2 to fulfill the mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos.
Right. So even going back, like let's say I light 25 minutes before, and I leave the house, and they're gonna, they still need another 5 minutes.
That's fine.
That's cool.
Fine. That's cool. That's cool, and it's fine. Now, why 18 minutes? Does anyone know? Does that have anything to do with matzah?
I was just gonna say, yeah.
So it doesn't really have anything to do with matzah, but so here the reason for the 18 minutes is really as the custom developed. So in terms of like the development of halacha, it's just interesting to see the development of halacha, and you have the mitzvah of Shabbos. Then you have the mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos, which is adding on to it. You can't start it too early. You don't want to start it too late, God forbid. But so where did the 18 minutes come from? So here, this gets us into the very, very ambiguous topic of Bein Hashmashot. Bein Hashmashot means it's like a twilight zone for those people who watched that show years ago. And Bein Hashmashot, it's called Bein Hashmashot because it's between the luminaries. It's like between the sun and the moon. And it's the time period in which there's a doubt whether it's day or night. Rav Soloveitchik said that it's not really that there's a doubt. I mean, Chazal, but it's more that Chazal defined it as a time period, and you have to treat it as if there's a doubt, because it has qualities of day and it has qualities of night. After sunset, for a period of time, right? So the sun has gone below the horizon, so there's no longer the sun in the sky, but you still have some light in the sky. So on the one hand, it has elements of night in that the sun has gone down, has set. On the other hand, it has elements of day in that there's still light in the sky. So we treat Bein Hashmashot as a suffix, as a doubt. Yeah. The mainstream standard opinion is that Bein Hashmashot, that doubtful period, is a period of time after sunset. and that from sunset for a period of time is considered bein hashmashot. We have to accept it. We have to accept upon ourselves the stringencies of Shabbat because it might be night. There are some leniencies during this time period of bein hashmashot, but for generally speaking, you have to assume it's totally Shabbos already at sunset, right? Because we're stringent when it comes to Shabbat. Now, how long is this period of bein hashmashot? So this is a whole separate shiur. It'll take me an hour to explain it. The one Gemara says that it's 3/4 of a mil. Another Gemara seems to contradict that, where the other Gemara says that it's 4 mil. What's a mil? A mil is the distance of 2,000 amot, and it's understood by the commentaries to mean the amount of time that it takes to walk 2,000 amot. And so there's 3 opinions regarding how long a mil is. One opinion is that it's 18 minutes. One opinion is that it's 22.5 minutes. And one opinion is that it's 24 minutes. What's 3/4 of a mil? What's 3/4 of a mil? So 3/4 of a mil could be something between 13.5 and 18 minutes. Now, most opinions assume, okay, now we're not going to get into the weeds on this topic because that period of time of 3/4 of a mil might be only in Yerushalayim at the time of the spring equinox, and that maybe it's longer at other times of the year, and maybe it's longer in other locations. So that's why we usually assume how many minutes after sunset do we end Shabbat? So our custom at Beth Jacob is 42 minutes. Why 42 minutes? Because we assume bein hashmashot is, at most, 35, 36 minutes. And then we add on a little bit, to add on to Shabbat, for the mitzvah of Tosefet Shabbat. There's another custom of 44 minutes or 45 minutes, or Moshe Feinstein said 50 minutes. Rabbeinu Tam, right? Some of you might be aware that Rabbeinu Tam, his opinion was that you should wait 72 minutes. And the reason for that is because there's another passage that seems to say that bein hashmashot is, that it's a whole different rubric of time as presented in another passage. But according to the passage in Masechta Shabbat, bein hashmashot, this period is 3/4 of a mil. 3/4 of a mil is between 13.5 and 18 minutes, but depends on where you are and what time of year. And that's why pretty much after 30, 35 minutes, you could assume it's nightfall, really. For Shabbos purposes, we're more stringent and we wait until 42 minutes at least. Okay, here you go. You ready? There's an opinion of Rabbi Elazar Mimetz. Rabbi Elazar Mimetz, who lived in the 1300s, wrote a book called the Yereim. And in that sefer, he says that the period of bein hashmashot, this ambiguous period, this period in which it might be Shabbos already, this period begins prior to sunset. Don't get upset, Martin. Don't get upset, Martin. Okay? It's just an opinion. He's entitled to his opinion. But this was the opinion of Rabbi Elazar Mimetz. The Gra and many others say that no, until sunset, it's really totally day. From sunset and on, that's when you have this doubtful period, and then it becomes nightfall. Rabbeinu Tam has his own opinion, but Rabbi Elazar Mimetz was a holdout, collector's item opinion, where he said that really there's a doubtful period of time prior to sunset, and that at sunset, then it's definitely Shabbos, but there's a doubtful period of time prior to Shabbos. How long is that doubtful period? 3/4 of a mil, and that's 18 minutes. That, my friends, is the basis for the custom of women and many men, right, to light candles, to accept Shabbos 18 minutes, at least 18 minutes prior to sunset. And the reason why they do that is to take upon themselves the stringency of Rabbi Elazar Mimitz. We don't follow him, normatively speaking. We don't follow his opinion. But the custom developed to consider his opinion and say, you know what, we're going to go above and beyond and take it upon ourselves as a stringency to accept Shabbos 18 minutes before, in accordance with his opinion. Now, some have the custom of doing 20 minutes before. Why? 18 minutes to fulfill the stringency of Rabbi Elazar Mimitz, and 2 additional minutes because of Tosefes Shabbos. In Yerushalayim, you might be aware, right? Yerushalayim, they start, I think it's like 40 minutes prior to sunset. They begin Shabbos even earlier. It's a minhag Yerushalayim to start Shabbos earlier. And that's a separate discussion about how that minhag developed. So in terms of explaining the 18 minutes, really the 18 minutes is this period of time prior to Shkia, where the custom developed to accept Shabbos then. But it's not. But if you didn't accept it, then you do have that period of time because it's not really Shabbos yet. It's really Shabbos at sunset. And certainly, if you accept upon yourself Shabbos, then it's also really Shabbos. Although we said there are 2 schools of thought about that, right? In other words, once you accept upon yourself Shabbos, well, let's say you say Baruch Hu in Shul, or you say Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos. When you accept upon yourself Shabbos, so I mean, if it's after Shkia, yeah, then it's Shabbos already. If it's after sunset, but if it's prior to sunset and you accept upon yourself Shabbos, so then we said then it's really Shabbos. Although we gave the 2 schools of thought exactly how you view, when you accept Shabbos early, how do you view that? We said there's a couple different ways to view it, but it's really Shabbos. But that's the development of this halacha, of the different steps reaching to this idea of 18 minutes prior to Shabbos. Yes, Ron.
So the 18 minutes also is 18 because the gematria of God's name, El Chai Vekayam, and they chose that as it's in his name. So
I don't think that's the I never heard that being the reason. Although 18 minutes. Thank you, Stephanie. 18 minutes is also chai. It's a good number, right? Chai dollar. I say a person should give mate dollars, right? Chai is to be alive. Mate is to die. Mate is $440.
Oh boy!
But it's mentioned in God's name. So
chai is nice, but mate is even better in a certain sense. But el chai v'kayam. Yeah, so kel chai v'kayam. Okay, but I don't think that's the reason for except lighting candles 18 minutes.
But it's interesting because Ashkenazic use 18 as a good luck number. Sephardic use 26. The Yud He Vav He name. So it's completely when they donate to the shul, it's 18 or multiplication. In Sephardic shul, 26 or multiplication.
Now you're talking. Now you're getting better. Yeah. Ayala.
When you look at the calendar for candle lighting and when Shabbat is out, or Motzai Shabbat is called, it's usually an hour and 5 minutes, depending on the season. But it is usually an hour after the Zman of lighting.
Ayala, according to the Beth Jacob custom, and many shuls follow this, where they do 42 minutes, then it's usually an hour, or a minute one way or the other, depending on the season. Okay. Why? Because candle lighting is 18 minutes prior to sunset.
Right.
And Shabbos ends 42 minutes after sunset.
Right.
Why 18 minutes prior to sunset? That's to fulfill the mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos, to add on to Shabbos early at the beginning. And number 2, to be stringent. It's a custom to be stringent, like Rabbi Elazar Mimitz of the Sefer Yereim, who viewed the Ben Hashmashot period as being prior to Shkia. That's why 18 minutes in advance. And why 42 minutes on the back end? That's because of the more extended period of Ben Hashmashot, plus Tosefes Shabbos on the back end. So it ends up being an hour. If you see a calendar of an hour and 7 or 8 minutes, in many like Ezra's Torah, Luach, or in many calendars, if they follow Rav Moshe Feinstein, then it would be like an hour and 8 minutes after.
Right. But that's what I've always followed is an hour plus. But okay. By the way, I never, ever, maybe I should not say this, never knew about the 18 minutes. My mother always lit Bazman, and so did I, until I met my first daughter-in-law. And sometimes she was rushing, and I go, you gotta light candles. She goes, it's okay, I've got 18 minutes. And I'm looking at my husband, I go, where did that come from? But I know she's religious, so that's Elizabeth. I knew
Right.
she wasn't making up a story, but
Right.
recently I heard what you're talking about, so it's very
Well,
funny.
Well, it's good to light when it says candle lighting time, and it's good to light 18 minutes in advance for the reasons we explained. But you do have a few extra minutes,
Okay.
yeah. But we shouldn't get
So
carried
now
away
I
or
know.
abuse it too much. Actually, it's interesting. I think Rav Moshe Feinstein has a tshuva where he used to. I think he used to drive to the shul when it was a little bit into the 18 minutes, and then I think it could be that somebody said something, but he came to a conclusion and realized, with his his position as posek, as gadol hador, that it wasn't right for him to drive to shul when it was a couple minutes into the 18 minutes. He felt it was wrong for him to do that, but he did take advantage of any intrinsic reasons. You're able to take advantage of a few minutes there in the 18 minutes, but he felt, what, maybe it's not right. Maybe he should accept it 18 minutes in advance and not do anything, or drive a car in public, during the 18 minutes.
But Rabbi, if you